Hey guys, the patch notes for Heist leak came out yesterday, and I had waited until today when they released some more of the gen information before releasing this video. So now that both of these releases are out, let's go in real quick and take a look at all the changes. The patch notes originally, didn't look all that amazing, but once you look at the gem and look at, how the damage that they have at level 20, things get a lot more interesting. Let's get right into it. Okay, so going into the patch notes, after I'm reading it, there really wasn't too much going on here. Some things got nerfed, nothing really got crazy buffs, but the new gems look really interesting. And honestly, I would say most of the biggest changes are still coming. And by that, I mean, there are more than 800 alternate quality variants of existing and new support and skill gems. That's crazy. 90 new replica unique items. That's insane as well. And what these items and support gems and active skill gems are going to do is it's going to change the playstyle significantly for a lot of different characters. So I still don't know what the replica gems and replica unique items and alternate quality gems are, but we do see some of the new gems, and some are pretty good, some they're just okay. So before we go into the gems, let's just take a look at some of the minor changes, and then we can talk about the new skills. There's some minor stuff like permanent minions such as golem zombies and animated guardians, and now save when you log out and then automatically resummon when you log in. That's actually really nice because it's kind of annoying to resummon everything every time you log out and log back in. So this is actually a pretty nice change. Good quality of life, especially if you play summoners a lot. So projectiles. The projectile rework is actually really interesting. I don't know how much this will actually affect most builds, but basically previously, say you had an arrow that chained. If for whatever reason it chains only to 2 monsters, even though it can chain to 4, and there are no more monsters around anymore, it'll do 2 chains, return, and then it'll stop any other chains. Now with this change, what's going to happen is it's going to chain twice, it's going to return, and if it hits something else, it's going to chain again. And that could actually be really interesting, especially with the alternate quality faster projectile support gem, which gives you a chance for your projectiles to return. So potentially, if it can, if you can add some modifiers to it, whether that is fork, chain, splitting, I don't know, piercing, and you add return, you can potentially get a lot of value out of that. Not sure how you could take advantage of that specifically, but this change could be very interesting if you play a lot of projectile builds, bow builds, I would say primarily. A lot of the modifiers to chill and shock also affect brittle and sap. Kind of interesting, I think. Doesn't affect anything I'm doing though. Intensity now has a maximum of 3 stacks from 4. That's actually pretty good because if you decide to use intensity, it's actually stronger now that it has, it builds intensity faster. Specifically, if you decide to play Crackling Lance this league, that's the lightning skill, the intensity here, already is a buff. So curse skill reworks, I'm actually really interested in the way curses have been reworked. I am probably gonna play either some kind of Hex Blast or Impending Doom build, and if not, I'm gonna try out the Crackling Lance. The way curses have been changed themselves, I feel like they've gotten a little bit weaker, especially given that Assassin's Mark, Poacher's Marks have been turned into marks and aren't hexes. So you can only use a mark on a single enemy, whereas before you could do it in an AoE, right? So yeah, there you go. It says it right here. You can have an enemy that is affected by a mark and a hex, but you can't mark an enemy with 2 marks, nor can you mark 2 different enemies. So basically, marks are going to turn into something you only use on bosses or really strong monsters. Otherwise, you won't be marking all that much. Steel skills. Shattering looks kind of good. Lancing, I'm not too sure. Originally, I was thinking Lancing Steel could be pretty good, but after looking at the numbers, maybe not. We're going to have to see. So yeah, with these marks, they're probably going to be used just for bosses, but one thing that could be pretty good, or that is good, is the fact that they don't face penalties when you use them on bosses. So typically when you use a curse, or the old curses, when you use them on bosses, the curses suffer like a 60% penalty or something when it's applied, or 30%. With marks, they don't suffer that penalty. So maybe it's still good. I'm not sure. So yeah, so Lancing Steel and Shattering Steel over here. Personally, I'm not too sure how these will go. Lancing Steel looks pretty bonkers, actually, if you look at the damage. And just the way the mechanics work. The Shattering Steel. Lancing Steel seems more to like maybe a single target skill. I have no idea how it'll perform for clearing. And it doesn't look like all that impactful. I don't know. I would have to try this out. Definitely, I don't know if I'm going to start with this. This was a build that I originally was thinking about, like a Lancing or Shattering Steel champion, but now I'm not too sure. Firestorm got changed quite a bit, so it calls down like a big meteor, and there's a significant cooldown with this skill. I don't know. People say it's good, it's better, but it looked really impactful. I don't know if the damage is going to be that good. Glacial Cascade is going to be probably pretty good. You're going to get back to the, it knocks enemies back, so you can potentially shotgun with Glacial Cascade. So if you want to play Glacial Cascade, GC Mines are probably going to be good again. Not good again. What I mean to say is they're probably going to be pretty good as a league start. So if you ever want to play Glacial Cascade, now's probably a pretty good time. Discharge got changed significantly, and the biggest change is an added damage effectiveness of 450%. That is actually huge. So I would say with this build, you could probably look at doing some kind of Discharge Chieftain or Juggernaut Proliferate with Ignites. You could even potentially think about using Stormfire to ignite using base lightning damage. This is probably one of the biggest hits you can get with any skill. And if you're going to apply ailments with it, it's going to be crazy. Now, the only problem with this charge is it has a really long, I think it was like 2 second cooldown. It's pretty long. You could obviously use the Threshold Jewel to get it back to the original cooldown that it had before this change, but then the damage would be lower, I would think. Punishment, the only really interesting thing about it is it causes 10% of overkill damage from killing blows against cursed enemies to reflect to others as physical damage. So it's like Herald of Ash. That in theory is pretty strong, but I don't know how strong. Like when I was playing the Righteous Fire character last league, using Herald of Ash together with the Explosion Chest was a lot of damage. And a lot of that was partly the overkill damage and partly the fact that, the explosion damage gets scaled based on fire. So scaled as physical, this might be pretty useful now if you play like an Impale build that scales physical damage, and then you put punishment on them, and maybe you get a lot more clear with this. I'm not sure. Vitality is kind of interesting. I think I might plan on using Vitality on ES character. So if I go Zealot's Oath, I slap on Vitality. So Vitality got changed. Instead of reserving a percentage of your mana, it reserves a flat amount. So 233 mana at gem level 20. And then it regenerates a flat amount as well, 247. Based on calculations, calculations on Reddit, in order to get the same amount from like pre-buff Vitality, I'm going to call it a buff, you need like 15,000 HP, which you're not going to get. Ball Lightning, it got hit with a big nerf. I'm sorry. It probably brings it back down to, it was very strong last league. So this probably brings it in line with all the other skills. It's probably still pretty strong, but you're going to have to invest, a little bit more on it. Curses, you get Doom, whatever. And then Spellslinger got hit with a bit of a nerf, I would say. The cooldown got increased to 0.6, and the mana reservation is a little bit higher. It's probably still usable, but I would say the only problem is you probably have to take a few more points on your tree to reduce the amount of mana reserved. Now that it has increased cooldown recovery on your jewel, I don't know. It could still be good. It still is good. So the passive tree balance is what was really interesting to me since I wanted to play a curse build next league. Doomsday, apparently this literally causes your hexes to apply statically on the ground, and whatever is sitting within that that area gets hexed. I might play around with this together with Impending Doom or Hex Blast. This might be useful, might not be. Glancing Blows got nerfed pretty hard, actually. You take 65% of damage instead of 50. The biggest nerf is the fact that you can't get it through Thread of Hope. So you actually have to you have to pass through the Templar tree in order to pick it up. And those extra points might not make it worth it for Glancing Blows. So instead, maybe it's better to just go pure block. Divine Flesh got nerfed a little bit as well. So instead of giving you plus 10 maximum chaos resistance, now you get plus 5. I would say it's still good, but maybe not as much of a chase item, right? Certain builds can take advantage of it if they stack a lot of plus maximum chaos res. Otherwise, it might not be worth it. Whispers of Doom got moved. Hexmaster got moved. Corruption got moved. What's interesting here is 0.2% of chaos damage is leached as energy shield. So you could actually sustain a build that just does chaos damage on hit instead of chaos damage over time and leech through that. I kind of like that, and I'm definitely going to be picking up all 3 of these clusters. Another one that's really interesting is Dark Intent. Basically, the big thing is it raises the starting doom of hexes you apply. So apparently you start with 10 doom, which could be which probably is pretty good. So, you know, one of my concerns with Impending Doom is you have to wait for Doom to stack up, but if you start with 10 Doom and you can scale the damage enough, maybe 10 Doom is enough and you just trigger it immediately and it blows up. Who knows? Ascendancies. The Assassin got nerfed quite a bit. The critical strike chance, while maximum power charge went down a little bit, and crit multi went down as well. This is not too bad. I would say you're probably, you know, if you were planning on playing an Assassin before, this probably doesn't change your mind. The Necromancer and Ascendant got hit, and this is probably a slightly bigger nerf. You know, from 50% reduced effect to 25. Basically, it's half as effective now. And then some unique items got changed. Watcher's Eyes got changed, so they're not as strong as they are before. Probably still good. You probably still want to go for a Watcher's Eye, but you know, they were just absolutely bonkers prior, right? And typically Watcher's Eye is, I would say it's probably a chase item. Maybe now there's less of a need for it. Maybe you could chase something else. So the Zana League mods were released as well. What's kind of interesting is, you know, you see all this stuff. Blight and Delirium are 8 and 16 chaos respectively. That's a big cost. I don't see, unless you're like playing a lot, you're probably not gonna be buying the Blight and Delirium, or you're not gonna be choosing it from the get-go, because spending 16 chaos every single time per map is probably pretty expensive. What's gonna happen instead though is you're probably gonna use Fortune Favors the Brave, and you know, even if you haven't unlocked Blight and Delirium, Fortune Favors the Brave could potentially choose those options. So if you spend 3 chaos and then you get Delirium, you know, you're getting a lot of value out of Fortune Favors the Brave. And really any of these, right? All of these cost 3 chaos and above. If you hit these 2, Domination isn't that bad actually. Extra shrines, extra pack size, and then Abyss, you know, chance for, I guess Abyss is the worst one in this list, but I don't even think Domination's that bad. But yeah, you should be using Fortune Favors the Brave basically every time. As you get to maybe red maps, maybe even yellow maps, I would say it's probably worth it. And that way you can get a higher chance of, you know, you got to start farming your cluster jewels earlier on as well. So, and then I love how they added some blight balance changes. Like, why now? Who cares? But okay, sure, whatever. And yeah, then you got a bunch of bug fixes. I didn't even bother reading through these, but let's go look at the gems now. So here are the new gems. Like I said, the Splitting Steel looked pretty interesting, but that's probably not going to be my league starter. My league starter is probably going to be either Crackling Lance, or Hex Blast, or Impending Doom. It's one or the other, actually. I haven't decided which one I want to try. I might do Hex Blast and give that a try, or Impending Doom, give that a try, and if I don't like it, I'll switch over to Hex Blast. These are all very interesting skills, actually, that came out. So Blazing Salvo, I think, would be pretty good on a miner. So if you play a Saboteur miner, you can probably even pull a, you know, Ball Lightning build on PoE Ninja right now and slap Blazing Salvo on it instead, and you probably get something very similar. You add what is it, Flame Wall over here, and your Blazing Salvo in combination with Flame Wall could be a very interesting starting build. Crackling Lance, it looks insane. I'm not kidding, it looks really, really good. So if you want to try, if you take again like a Ball Lightning build, I would do it with maybe an Ascendant, or even you know, Enki's Arc Witch. Like, that's a very comprehensive guide, but instead of using Arc, you use Crackling Lance. This one, together with Sigil of Power, could be really good. And then there's Hex Blast. So these Flame Wall, Frost Shield, Sigil of Power, and Void Sphere. Sorry, one is not like the other. Frost Shield, Sigil Power, and Void Sphere. These three are actually really interesting. The least interesting, surprisingly, actually, is Void Sphere, even though it looks super cool in the videos. Sigil of Power and Frost Shield is going to give you a lot of defensive bonuses. Frost Shield is probably better for someone who's going with like cold damage over time, or just like some kind of ES build, whereas Sigil of Power is really gonna do really well with Archmages. So I would say, you know, like a Crackling Lance Archmage together with Sigil Power for defense. And then you go hard on the mana, you go agnostic, you go mind over matter. It would be really sick. That's one thing I was considering to start with. Otherwise, I'm going to do Occultist, Impending Doom. You know, you stack a bunch of curses, you stack the dooms, and you just get explosions everywhere. That could be really fun. They also included an Elemental Penetration support and Pinpoint support. I don't know what I'm going to use it for. I don't know if it's good enough. I honestly, I can't tell. So I'm looking at the skills, and one thing I noticed was that Enduring Cry got a bit of a nerf. Before, you gained minimum 1 charge, and now you don't get that anymore. So you actually need to have some mobs around you in order to get endurance charges, and additionally, the cooldown got increased from 6 to 8. It is somewhat significant, but I don't think it's going to stop people from using Enduring Cry, to be honest. Vulnerability. These changes look actually pretty interesting, especially if you look at the fact that instead of affecting bleed and physical damage, is now pure ailment. So if you play any ailment build, dealing damage 20% faster might actually be really good. So, you know, you might, if you're using an ignite build, if you're using a poison build, vulnerability might be pretty good here. Obviously, having chance to inflict bleeding still, you know, this works better with bleeding builds, but 20% faster is, you know, it could tip the scale a little bit, especially if you're doing multi-curses. Okay, so I just took a look at Lancing Steel, and Origin, I poo-pooed it a little bit, but maybe it's not that bad. You know, there's certain aspects of the skill that could potentially make you back off of it a little bit, but it still has the nice flat damage, 113 to 169 added attack damage. The fact that hits after the first on each enemy deals 60% less damage is a little bit concerning to me. So basically, after the first hit, everything else deals 60% less damage. You know, it's like Barrage, right? But with a sword instead of, or an axe instead of a bow. Is that necessarily better? I don't know. Like, Barrage isn't that crazy strong. You have to scale it like crazy. So I don't know. I don't actually, you know what? I don't think Lancing Steel is going to be that good. So Shattering Steel here actually looks a lot more interesting, a lot more tempting. You know, there's certain aspects about it that makes it pretty unique. Each steel ward grants +4 chance to block projectile attack damage, so you get a little bit of projectile block. You know, you get a little bit more AoE. So the biggest problem with Lancing Steel, I think, was the fact that it might not have enough clear, and even if it does, the single target didn't look that good. So Shattering Steel, you know, the concern is still with single target, I think, and especially since it doesn't shotgun anymore. But this probably has better clear. So, you know, if I were to pick the two, just from a glance, I would say I would pick Shattering Steel instead. This might become like a really good skill this league. So Assassin's Mark, kind of interesting, especially if you use it against bosses. 5% chance to grant a power charge when hit, and then 49 critical strike multiplier. If you're playing a crit build and you are fighting a boss, you're probably going to want to use a mark. Okay, really, that's about it. I don't see anything else. One thing that I did notice that I wanted to make note of is there was one skill, Mark for Death, on southeast of the Duelist tree. It grants increased effect of your curses and gives Cold Strike against marked enemies. I think if you're somewhere on the duelist tree, this is probably a cluster that you really want to pick up every time. You basically get Culling Strike, and if you're fighting a boss, you're probably going to use some kind of mark. I would say every build should try and get at least one mark just for bossing. You know, you don't actually need to do anything. You self-cast that thing and then you apply the mark. You get Culling Strike when they're at 10%. That's probably like a really big deal. So if you're anywhere close to the duelist tree, or if you're pathing around there, I would say Mark for Death is probably like a really interesting cluster that you want to pick up. All right, so that's basically all I got. So real quick, I'm gonna show you the build that I had. This was me attempting a Crack Lightning. That's what I called it, but I wasn't actually done with it, so forget it. Curse Assassin, Curse Occultist. So this is my tree for my Curse Occultist. I think I'm gonna be playing the Curse stuff. Definitely I want to pick up this one as well. I think they said at Skittering Runes, that's where you get plus 10 starting Doom. So I currently have 97 points allocated, which means I still have around 14 points that I can use towards a Cluster Jewel. And then maybe you can put something in here and you get, you know, inspired learning shenanigans. Yeah, this is probably what I'm going to do. You know, you pick up all the curse, you pick up corruption, you get all the curse nodes, you get a bunch of ES. This is going to be like a CI build. Potentially in the future, we could grab the aura stuff and then go low life instead. Probably not though. And what I'm thinking is, if I can start with 10 Doom from the get-go through the cluster over here, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna apply like a buttload of curses, like 3 or 4 curses, and then I'm gonna put Hex Blast on like a trigger somewhere, so that every time I curse, I instantly trigger it and blow it up. Hopefully it does enough damage, and then I just like spam curses on top of enemies. Hopefully that works. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to see. And then we get like 3 or 4 curses on top of somebody, and then we just like apply the AoEs. And all we do is curse. We run around, curse, run around, curse. To be honest, I don't think this is as strong as the Crack Lightning. Crack Lightning? Crackling Lightning? I can't say it, so just Crack Lightning. The Crack Lightning build, I think, is actually going to be really, really, really strong. It has really good AoE. It has really good single target. I would actually recommend you try to give that, you know, you give that build a try, but it's just, this build is just so tempting. I really want to play something with curses. It looks really fun. I don't know, maybe on League Start I'm gonna change my mind, but this is probably what I'm gonna go with. So that's basically you know, what I'm looking at for the patch notes and the new gems. Once they release the alternate quality gems, I'm not gonna make a video on it. There's way too many. 800 gems, are you kidding me? But I think there's some like really interesting stuff that you're going to get out of there. You're going to get some really, really cool builds this league because of those alternate quality gems. And I freaking love it, right? Like, part of the reason why I play this game is you can play all kinds of cool builds, and then you get stuck in this theory crafting world where you're like, oh my God, what if I did this? What if I changed, you know, change certain things up? Like even with Hex Blast, let's go back to Hex Blast real quick. With Hex Blast, all damage can ignite, all damage can freeze, all damage can shock. Are you kidding me? That's crazy. What if you did like a ignite Hex Blast proliferation build? Whoa, like I in my head, 35% more damage with ailments per 5 Doom. You can get 40 Doom potentially. So that's 8 times 35. So that's like 260 to how much is that? 280% more damage with ailments. Crazy. Or just 400% more damage if they are at max Doom per hit, per Hex Blast. That's a lot of damage, right? So I don't know. I'm gonna have to see. I'm gonna have to see. Like, the one concern with Hex Blast is maybe you don't get enough AoE. You would have to scale a lot of AoE. Not sure. But yeah, like those alternate gems are going to make a bunch of crazy new builds. One thing I was thinking about, and replica uniques, one thing I was thinking about is actually like a poison proliferation flame blast Pathfinder. Basically, I believe the alternate quality flame blast made it so that you can convert 60%, no, 40%, 40 or 60% of your fire damage to chaos damage. And then you could also dual wield consuming dark daggers, and that'll give you 100% fire damage to chaos conversion. And then you use, like flame blast to freaking one-shot bosses with low tolerance on the cluster jewel. You're going to get all kinds of weird builds this league, and I am freaking looking forward to it. Now, if you're asking me, hey, Emnix, how about you come up with like a super weird build? I just told you, I'm Flame Blast. That's my meta. That's my my meme build. Okay, that's my meme build right there. But otherwise, I don't have anything else up my sleeve. I saw a replica Iron Commander, which could be really good for strength stacking Chieftain using Shrapnel Ballista. That could be really good as well. We're gonna have to see other people play it, so stay tuned. I won't be able to play it on League Start. I'm gonna try my best, but I don't think I will be able to play it because I actually bought a house and I'm moving on Friday, and I need to get all my shit in. I need someone to set up my internet, and then we gotta paint the walls, we gotta rip out the carpet. So I'm gonna be like squatting in my new house for like the next week, like 2-3 weeks or so. God knows how much I'm going to be able to play, but I did take next week off, mostly to do home renovation, but hopefully I'll be able to find some time to play some PoE because this league looks bonkers. I didn't even get around to talking about Heist, but who cares? New gems!